let's talk about the Patriots. They're not a sexy team. I know you have affection for them.
Of course.
Led by Big Bill still, or Little Bill, I guess. Mac Jones, not a sexy fantasy option.
No.
No, sure not.
No.
Sure. But let me ask you this. Can you dismiss him in best ball 2 quarterback leagues?
No.
Okay.
I
That's what I thought you would say.
I think the Patriots are full of the classic cliche, good in real life, not great for fantasy type of guys. Yeah. I love a lot of their players top to bottom. They're all like very similar molds, so they all kind of nibble at each other's cheese. And it's good for real life because it's tougher to defend a team like that. But it ultimately doesn't typically create fantasy monsters.
They're Jones, like a socialist team. They're not even nibbling at each other's cheese. It's just one big block of cheese.
Yeah.
That they're all just kind of helping themselves to, taking equal portions.
That's a fair way to put it. Yes. A big block of cheese, the Patriots. Mac Jones, all the reports, taking another step as a leader, really owning the locker room, like showing up first man in, last man out, all the stuff you love to hear real life wise. Again, fantasy wise, 4,200-ish yards, 29 TDs. Like that's okay. Serviceable QB2, but not someone I'm going into the season as my locked in number one. Running backs, as we know, are always a dreaded nightmare. As you can see with my projected shares here, like I think it's a nice balanced 47% ratio here, right around league average on everything, but it's going to be divided up in such like a tricky way, both the receiving and ground pies. So 36 going to Harris, 33 to Rhamondre, 11% going to Pierre, but then a lot of targets. That's me kind of projecting Pierre taking over the James White role while he's out, and then James White coming back, and then also seeing a lot of targets. So you can see it might end up being a 4-headed nightmare. The one guy like Rhamondre I have is like the number 2 back here, but they're really praising him for his receiving ability. So maybe he ends up taking the James White role over Pierre Strong. That's what CJ projected today in a great article he wrote over at rotostreetjournal.com. Check it out.
Check it out.
Damien Harris, just a guy I'm out on though at his price. And that's a guy that has 10 touchdowns to his name. So I guess in best ball, like maybe that still makes sense. But good luck figuring out when those games are coming. Sorry, my light just got knocked over here.
That's all right.
All right. I don't know if I look way different, but I'm just going to leave it off to the side now.
Yeah, you just look like you're in kind of a shadowy room.
Did it completely like, yeah, no, whatever.
No,
our face is
small. You're fine.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, Damien Harris, plus the injury risk, like of the running backs, he goes about 3 to 4 rounds before Rhamondre. I kind of like Rhamondre where he goes in round 12 or so with that handcuff upside with the maybe James White. Like he might be the handcuff to both running backs, which makes him very, very viable. And especially if he ended up taking over a 3-down role at any point. So I'm into that. I kind of like Rhamondre at his price. The rest of the backfield, I just think Harris, and I was very into Harris last year, and it pretty much worked out for us pretty well. I'm kind of getting off the train this year. There's not enough receiving upside. I think there's too much inconsistency with the carries this year in round 2 of Rhamondre that I'm not into it. I do like a last round stab at Pierre Strong though. Athletic freak, just big 220 running a 4.3, like jacked, and a very good receiver. So if he does take over the James White role, that's a guy that could do a whole lot of damage on that type of work. So I am a big Pierre Strong fan as a last round best ball type of stab.
Okay.
So yeah. And then you get to the receivers, and the slot has always dominated for the Pats. That's why I have a nice 20% share, 109 for Jakobi Meyers. But it's such like he's just like a mediocre talent. I mean, 4 touchdowns seems almost too many for him because he's only had 2, I think, in his entire NFL career.
Sure.
So that seems a little bit too generous on my end. I do really like Kendrick Bourne. He ended up catching 78% of his passes last year while averaging over 15 yards a catch. Like that was efficiency you just don't see. And I think he's a real player. So best ball wise, again, he had multiple 25-point weeks, and you get him in round 14 right now. He's one of my favorite last round receivers to then go stab at. A tricky, again, though, redraft guy where I have to now predict when that big spike's going to happen. I don't know about that. I don't know that I want to have to do that. I'll take him in best ball. Probably won't otherwise. I think Parker's pretty overdrafted just because I think the other guys might be better than him. The new guy in town, could be interesting, but I don't think he's so good that he's elevated way above these guys. Like their projections had him significantly higher than everybody else, and I didn't see that. I don't think he's that much better than the others. And then you got the classic Hunter Henry. Like, he's a touchdown machine, doesn't do much else. 8 to 10 touchdowns. Love that, though. Good tight end, too, for that. I'm not into Jonathan Smith. A lot of people predicting, his second year in the system, he's really going to break out. He had his chance. I'm done with him. No interest in him. So I guess the summary is a lot of really good real-life players that fantasy-wise are probably nibbling at each other's cheese with a couple interesting late-round picks in Pierre Strong and Kendrick Bourne, and then Rhamondre in round 12 range could be just a league winner if Harris goes down type of thing.
All right. Short and sweet on the Patriots. Like that.
They're my boys. I think people are underselling them. I think
I think they're actually a decent team, but I don't think there's much to talk about fantasy
depth chart. Like, they're not good enough to beat the Bills. They're not going to win the division, but they'll get the wild card. And I think they're going to be tougher in the playoffs than they were last year because Mac Jones is just going to. He's the type of guy that does get fired.
They were not particularly tough in the playoffs.
No, they got.
Remember, there was a few week stretch there, like a couple weeks before the playoffs, where they were like really
Super Bowl. Yeah, they look like they might be back.
Yeah,
and who knows? Maybe we see that all this year. I really do like Mac Jones. I really like the future of the Patriots. I don't really like him in fantasy.
No, why would you? But there's a couple intriguing fantasy.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.